Hello, my name's Ajay and you're watching The Defining Moment for Creating the Culture of Conscience. Today we're joined once again by Mr. William Haines, who was the Director for Curriculum Development at the International Education Foundation and is now working as a religious education teacher in schools here in the UK. William, thank you for joining us again on The Defining Moment. Today we'd like to talk about character education, or what is character education. So, first of all, can you please tell us what are the origins of character education?
Well, they go all the way back, I suppose, to the beginnings of education, where parents wanted their children not just to learn technical skills, but also wanted ultimately, or more importantly, that their children should learn to become good people, develop good character, and basically the virtues that go along with being a person of good character. So this goes all the way back to the schooling in Greece, or schooling probably in any society.
What is character? What's defined by that word?
I suppose one could say that the kind of person that one is one's character. Whether one has a good character, lives a virtuous life, one has integrity, or one has bad character, one may be a hypocrite or dishonest or deceitful.
But it's not the development of character the responsibility of parents?
Oh yes, of course it is, yes. And parents are very concerned to bring their children up well, to inherit certain traditions and certain values. And yes, that's natural.
Well, we live in a society where it's actually now being taught in schools simply because, well, I guess it's not being taught by the parents.
Character education as such isn't really used it's not a term that's used in British schools. It's used particularly in America. The character education movement really developed in America, largely because in American schools they can't have religious education. They can't have religious education as such in the way that we do in this country. So in order to inculcate moral values into their children, then they call it character education. But in Britain, under the Education Act, 1988 Education Act, every single subject has to promote the spiritual, moral, cultural development of children. Not just religious education, but English, maths, science, PE, art. All these subjects have to promote the spiritual, moral development of children. And when schools are inspected, these subjects are also inspected to see to what extent they promote the spiritual and moral development of children. So this is more the vocabulary that's used in this country: spiritual, moral, social and cultural development of children, as opposed to character education, which is an American term.
So in that sense, we could say that character education is being taught across the board in all subjects in schools right now.
By law, it is supposed to be taught, yes. But then, of course, the question is how to do it. And well, this is a lot more difficult. You may have a piece of legislation that says that every subject has to promote the spiritual, moral, social and cultural development of children, but standing in a classroom is much more difficult to think about how to do this.
So who are the modern day role models when we're thinking of character education?
Well, in school, the most important relationship is the relationship between a teacher and a pupil. And without a teacher, then you can't have a school. And sometimes you come across schools which the buildings are very decrepit. But because they have good teachers and good pupils, then an extraordinary amount of education takes place. And so in a school, the teachers ought to be, well, they are role models for children. They influence the children. So, for example, if teachers are teaching personal, social, health education, and they're talking about the issue of smoking, the children say, "Well, do you smoke, sir?" And if a teacher says, "Well, yes, I do smoke, but I think you shouldn't smoke because of this, this, and this, and this," then it becomes very difficult to teach this particular subject. It's very hard to be a teacher and to be a hypocrite, as children can see through you straight away. If one's teaching about this is what's right, this is what's wrong, they always say, "What about you, sir? What do you do? Is this what you practice yourself?" And so it's very important then in the classroom that teachers should be people of upstanding integrity themselves and living very moral lives themselves, and then they can provide much better role models for children and can give the children the confidence that yes, it is possible not to smoke or not to take drugs or not to become a sex outside or before marriage, because they have done that themselves. But then in terms of the society, children are often looking at role models in terms of football stars and pop stars and these kinds of people. But the people that have the largest make the largest greatest impression upon children are their own parents and the role model and the model that they set, the example that they set, and their teachers. because they can see this is an ordinary person standing in front of me, and this person has gone through the same challenges that I've gone through, the same temptations that I'm going through, and was able to overcome these difficulties, and so it can be a good example for them.
So it's the everyday role models, the everyday heroes that really count when it comes to character education?
Well, I think so, yes. I mean, sometimes in schools, naturally enough, one studies about the lives of Martin Luther King or Mahatma Gandhi, people who are of extraordinary character, who've done extraordinary things on a worldwide level, but very few people have the opportunity, the chance, or the expectation that they would do something like that themselves. And so in that sense, they're very, very remote. Whereas if one meets somebody in a shop, or who treats one in a certain way, then this can make a good impression. Yes, I want to become like this person. Or one meets somebody in business or anywhere in the community who is living a good life, who's living an unselfish life, who's helping others and doesn't give in to temptation, is not corrupt. And that kind of person, an ordinary person, can become a very good role model, yes. The unsung heroes of our community and our society and of our country.
Now, when we look at our young people, particularly the environment that they are in, we can pretty much sum up that in many cases it's a characterless environment. They are constantly bombarded by things which lack character fundamentally, all the things that you've now just expounded. So in that kind of environment, how do you educate character?
Well, as I said, mostly through one's own life, but also through the kinds of material that one chooses in the curriculum. For example, one gives children the opportunity to explore Shakespeare. You can see extraordinary characters there, good characters and evil characters, and the kind of challenges and temptations that they faced. Or if you read Dickens or any great work of literature, a reader can enter into the lives of these different people, and as well as your own life being expanded, you can see, well, this is a good person, this is what they did, and this is a bad person, that's why they came to a sticky end. So I think a lot of it is being able to help children to have a chance to engage with the best that's ever been thought or written or painted or done. They can have some aspiration to something higher than just what they see in their daily life.
So literature could extend to what they see on television, a movie they watch in the cinema, a song that they listen on the radio. It could be all of those things, but nevertheless it could perhaps be educational to give them an opportunity to understand something more than just perhaps the fact that their parents are not that everyday role model. Their teachers perhaps are not that everyday role model, and therefore there has to be some other substitute.
Yes, there can be things like that, yes.
But I mean, I would say a lot of young people are not finding those role models, even though they are supposed to be the everyday role models, but yet, where are they, those everyday role models? Where are those parents where if you're only in a family with one parent and that one parent actually doesn't take much interest, and your teachers at school are just trying to survive, let alone teach the day, where do you find those role models? What's left?
Well, some children do and some children don't. I mean, if the family belongs to church, they may find it within their church or their religious community. They might find them somewhere else, but as you say, very often they don't find them anywhere, and so they become very disillusioned, and they turn to follow different impulses.
So when we think about character education, has it actually been successfully implemented anywhere in the world?
In a successful educational system, you wouldn't need character education, because children would naturally absorb the traditional way of life growing up. They'd naturally absorb it. I met somebody from Samoa 2 years ago, and it was in a conference seminar talking about character education, and somebody was trying to persuade him that he needed his country needed to adopt character education curriculum into their schools, and he said, "I don't think we need it." So I listened to him, and I realized, no, they don't need it. People only bring in character education programs consciously when something's going wrong in society. But if people naturally are behaving in a good way, then you don't need a character education program. It's basically trying to fix things.
But wouldn't you say in the UK we need to fix things, and therefore is there not a case for character education?
Well, yes, but as I said, in Britain it's termed it's phrased in terms of spiritual moral education. So one of the purposes of sport in English schools was to teach people a good character, teamwork, how to, win magnanimously, how to lose graciously, not to get upset when one loses again and again and again, but just to develop one's character and to try again.
But is it actually working? I mean, that all sounds well and good, but does it actually work in practice?
It has done in the past, but there's less and less sport in schools today, less and less opportunity for people to do these kinds of things, and the curriculums become more and more academic without giving children the opportunity to have these kind of experiences which they would have done in the past.
Okay, in the book Cultivating Heart and Character, which was an International Education Foundation publication, in that book I noticed there were quite a few topics or chapters on the issue of sex. So my question, William, is what does sex have to do with character?
Well, in my classroom I put up the 10 Commandments and I put up the teachings of all the different religions. And children often say, "What's religion got to do with sex, sir?" It says that one of the commandments is you shall not commit adultery. Then I explain, well, actually religion is concerned about how you live your life, how you find happiness. And religious people, through personal experience, have discovered if you live this kind of life, then you'll find happiness. If you live that kind of life, instead of finding happiness, you'll find a deep unhappiness. And so sexuality is an incredibly powerful drive, and people need to learn how to channel it in a way which is going to bring them true happiness and true love. And there are certain rules, things that one should do and certain things that one shouldn't do. And so if one becomes a person of good character, one should be a person who's able to make promises and keep them. So for example, if a person gets married and says, "I love you and I will be faithful to you," then they should be able to keep that promise. The person who doesn't have good character may make these kind of promises, but then won't keep them and will easily break them. And sometimes people just say, "I love you," just because they want to get, men often say, "I love you," because I want to get this person into bed. It would be very insincere. That's not a person of good character. And it leads to a tremendous amount of hurt and pain on the other person's behalf. So that's why character is very important in terms of our sexuality and sexual relationships. There should be people of integrity who really care and love other people and want other person's happiness.
Well, is it possible for someone to ever change fundamentally their character and then their behaviour? I mean, if that's something that one would actually like to do.
Yeah, people often do change. But the main thing that makes people change is when people have an encounter with the divine, some religious encounter. It doesn't matter what religion, what faith they belong to. When they have some kind of religious experience, then often they feel, they take stock of their whole life and they realise, "Oh, I've done this and this and this and this wrong," and they regret it and they apologise and they repent and they say sorry and they say, "I'm going to have a new start and a new beginning." Now, yeah, this is the thing, the encounter, the experience that most profoundly, most deeply, most permanently can change a person's character, yes.
But it's often the case that that experience comes much later in life when a lot of damage is already done.
Oh, yeah, sometimes, but better late than never.
Yes. I would just imagine that, the objective of having character education or even going back to religious education is to try and provide that experience, providing that turning point, so that before they actually do get into all kinds of other lifestyles and experimentation, that they actually can see, oh, well, this is perhaps the way I really want to live my life.
Yeah, that's one of the purposes of religious education, and also reading English literature, is to examine the lives of people, how people live their life, and what kind of consequences living that kind of life brings you to. Not just English literature, Tolstoy's War and Peace is full of examples of all kinds of different people, and how they lived their life and what kind of consequences it came to. And yes, that should be the job of teachers, to explain to children, this is the way the world is. Not just in terms of natural science, but in terms of spiritual laws. This is the way the world is. And ultimately, people have to make their own choices. But it's terrible if people make choices and later say, "I wish somebody told me. I would never have done that if I'd known better." And it's a moral responsibility of teachers to provide this kind of education and guidance to children, to pass on the wisdom of humanity from one generation to the next. So people have the opportunity, the chance to learn from the experiences of others and to try and avoid making those experiences themselves.
William, what advice would you give to a young person who, as they would say, kind of knows right and kind of knows wrong, but does the wrong anyway?
Try to understand why it is that they're choosing to do what's wrong. Sometimes there may be some hurt or some pain they have inside themselves, which means they almost set off on a self-destructive path. So I don't know, at that stage advice would help, but to really try to love them and understand them and to be a good friend to them and to try to make them feel that they're worthwhile, that they're valuable, and that they should take much better care of themselves and not, set off on a path which is going to damage themselves.
And do you feel free to take on that kind of role as a teacher in schools?
Well, teachers have a pastoral role within schools, particularly the form tutor has a pastoral responsibility in locus parentis, as it's called, to be concerned about the spiritual and moral welfare of children, and to, if they can see that they are struggling in some way, to try to find out why, to try to help them, to try to support them, or perhaps pass them on to somebody else within the school who can provide that kind of support.
Well, character education, it all sounds well and good, and spiritual and moral values all sound well and good, but bottom line, it doesn't really seem to be working in schools here today or anywhere else. So what's missing? Where's it losing somehow its focus?
Well, particularly in terms of character education, it's concerned about teaching children this is what is right, this is what is wrong, so what kind of person you should become. But sometimes children say, well, why should I be good? I know this is right, I know this is wrong, but why should I be good? But within the framework of character education, you can't answer that question. Because it's the question about the purpose of life. And if you ask about the purpose of life, that raises the question, is there a God that created me? And if God did create me, for what purpose did God create me? Why did God create me? Why is God interested in me if there is a God? So this opens this realm of the meaning of life. When people can find that life has a meaning and a purpose, it gives them some impetus to live a good life, because they can see some goal to which they're working. It's not just living a good life for the sake of it, but actually through this, achieving oneness with the divine, becoming one with the divine, achieving a personal, profound and deep relationship with God, which is what all religions teach. All religions hope to show a path by which their followers can attain oneness with God. And as I said, the character education, which focuses mostly on this idea of right and wrong, and isn't able to touch this particular aspect.
So would it be fair to say that it's kind of focusing on the how rather than the why? Like,
yes.
This is how you should be a good person,
yes.
but rather than, well, what's the point?
That's right. Yeah, the meaning, the meaning
but
side.
Why is that not being taught?
Well, in America, as I said, the character education movements which started in America, they're not able to raise these religious questions in their books or in their literature or in their schools. In Britain, you can do that, and increasingly that has been done. Within RE, religion, and in other subjects. But it's very hard. I don't know the answer to the question, honestly speaking. As I said, in English law, by law, every subject has to promote these things. Teachers try their best. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Of course, there are lots of other competing pressures on children, and lots of other competing temptations which are a lot more attractive. And
you identified earlier the crucial role of parents and teachers. Are we just basically lacking role models in those two fundamental areas of society?
Well, yes, I mean, the breakdown of the family obviously is dreadful. You know, when parents divorce is one of the most painful things that children can experience. This kind of hurt and this kind of rejection which they feel. And in a classroom, it's very clear which children come from broken families or broken homes or are being abused at home. It's very obvious in the way in which they behave, in the way in which they conduct themselves, in the way in which they feel about themselves. And this has all kinds of, ramifications for the classroom and for the schools in terms of behaviour.
And can we expect the children of broken families to grow up and become the future nurturing, loving, and indeed character parents of tomorrow?
Well, it's possible that they can, if they have some kind of life-changing experience. You can see many religious leaders from history have come from broken homes. Jesus had an unusual birth. Confucius was also from a single-parent family. Muhammad, his parents died when he was very young. So it is an incredible challenge for people, but it's possible for people to actually respond and go beyond that if they have some resources.
So out of this void of character and a generation growing up and quite some confusion, there is actually the hope that they could raise themselves up to become the very thing that they feel is actually missing from their lives.
It's possible, yes, again, through what resources they have. So I remember as a child when I was reading David Copperfield and seeing the kind of miserable situation that he went through, the miserable life, but he turned out very well. And I could see that it was possible, despite one's background, to turn out to become a fine person. Dickens himself, he said he was traumatized as a young boy having to go and work in a factory. But that traumatizing experience, he was able to use this as material for his books to change Victorian Britain in a good way.
And finally, William, what are your goals as a teacher? What would you like to accomplish, either in your long-term career or a very specific goal that you would like to see as somehow a step forward in teaching in Britain today?
Well, in personal goals in a classroom, I just want children to become better people. I want, as an RE teacher, I want Christians, Sikhs, Muslims, Buddhists to become better members of their own faith, to go into their own community and their own faith and explore it more deeply, and to become a better Christian or a better Muslim or a better Sikh or a better Hindu. And when that happens, then I feel very happy and incredibly fulfilled in what I'm doing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much once again, William, for sharing with us today.
Thank you.
Well, you've been watching The Defining Moment for creating the culture of conscience. If you'd like to find out more, you can look us up on the web at www.definingmoment.eu. Thank you for watching, and we wish you all the best.